Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We are going over a modern approach to mitigating business and continuity risks. Um, During this informative session, our panel of experts will review the challenges and risks associated with traditional disaster recovery solutions, introduce you to our modern solution, and talk about some of the incredible successes we've achieved with our own personal clients. Feel free throughout the session to post questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. We're going to leave some time to answer those questions at the end of today's presentation. If we don't get to your question, we apologize. We're going to record this and we'll get that out in an email, the answers to you. So let's introduce you to today's panel. Everybody here is an iArch employee and director. We've got Jeff Henkel, who's the Director of Managed Services, Mike Turner, the Director of Consulting Services, and Steve Sheekey, Director of Business Development. I'm going to now hand the mic over to Steve, who's going to dive right into today's material.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for joining. I want to take a little bit of time just to either refresh you of what we do and who we are, or not familiar, just give you a little bit of background of iArch itself. So we're in now our 11th year of operation. Our team of onshore architects, engineers, they've been servicing our clients globally now. With decades of experience in EPM and cloud experience, I like to say that we help you get the most of your existing systems and then guide you to your tomorrow. As you can tell on the right-hand side, we offer full suite of services from advisory to design, implementation, delivery, onto 24/7 day two services. We are an Oracle certified partner. We have certifications in OCI as well as Rackware. And we've been working with other cloud providers like Azure and AWS as well. So now the question would be like, why use iArch? I would say the big reason would be our experience. As I mentioned, the majority of our staff were former Oracle employees, and pre-Oracle, they were a lot of them came from Hyperion itself. The average tenure is about 22, 23 years and above, working with the EPM stack and cloud technologies. All of the engineers hold certifications, as I mentioned, in OCI. They're certified Rackware architects engineers. And we also have a Oracle ACE on staff. We like to say that we're kind of like the go-to firm. We're one of the last infrastructure focused firms in the Oracle EPM space. A lot of our staff were former leads in the Oracle infrastructure practice. In fact, they wrote most of the migration documentation that exists today that is still being used and has been used over the years. And then lastly, a little bit about our customers and partners that we do work with. We've worked with clients in every industry, every vertical, from public to private sector. We work with a lot of partners and channels that seek us out to become their boots on the ground for all cloud infrastructure related technologies. I like to say that, or we like to say that we don't just sell consulting services. We build relationships with all of our partners and channels as we go through this. So a little bit about us, and I think that's a great kind of lead into our first polling question, just to get everybody into the webinar. So first polling question, do you have a current DR plan? Keep it simple. and we'll bring up the polling question. We'll leave it up for about 30 seconds, but then we'll take a look at the results and discuss them briefly. So if you wouldn't mind just filling out the polling question, please. All right, thanks, Alex. So appreciate you taking the time to fill us in. I know Jeff, Mike, do you want to interpret their responses and give some feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we have a pretty mixed bag here. We've got some folks who have a current DR plan, about 43% of listeners, and about 57% who don't have one. So this should be informative for both parties, because even if you have a plan, we'll talk about some concepts around it and why you might want an update.
Excellent, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, like anything else, it's kind of interesting. We've been having this conversation for a while, the team, and um, funny or not, you go through and you talk to clients and you say, so, how was your last DR test? And invariably the answer always comes back, I was a disaster. So whether that's half jokingly or not, but it kind of leads to the point that, like anything, before you get something new, there was something that people used, something that people bought, owned, in anything, right? And before you build something new, there's something existing. It has some flaws. People start using, say, well, do I keep using it? Do I get something better? Same thing true with DR. So what we'd like to do is take a little bit of time to talk to some of the challenges and risks with traditional DR solutions. So as the title states, right, it's mitigate risks. So probably thought that would be a good spot to start with this. And I know, Jeff, you've been configuring DR solutions for a bit. Won't say how long, but for a little bit, let's say that. What do you see as some of the big risks with the traditional DRs today?
Yeah, I think if you look at the column here on the left, you're looking at the first big two. Primarily compliance comes up a lot, right? So not only do you have a lot of audit and regulatory requirements that may require you to have a disaster recovery environment, they also may require you to test that plan and that environment on a regular basis. And if you're not testing it, then of course you always have that potential for data loss, and that becomes more and more true every day with increasing security threats out there in the world, like ransomware. And then the other thing is with classical DR solutions, a lot of times you have longer RTO in particular. So it takes a long time to get that environment online. And you might even have an increased RPO because you may not be leveraging the best technology to get as close to the latest data in the event of a disaster. And of course, that can lead to financial losses and disruption to business continuity, as well as strain on business staff. With that, I'll pass it to Mike to talk about a couple other issues when we discuss relying on outdated DR solutions.
So older solutions don't always have the best automation. And when you lack automation, you lack the ability to get consistent results every time you want to go. So they're not necessarily repeatable and you can't always rely on them. So the lack of automation is definitely an inherent risk in older DR solutions. And older solutions are not necessarily scalable. Usually there's a shadow uh, system or a one-to-one relationship with the recovered systems. And in the new paradigm and new automation or new DR approaches, you have the ability of flexibility in the cloud and the ability to scale and be elastic, if you will, as you recover failed instances and go into a DR scenario.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jeff. And I'm sure what we just talked about is probably familiar with a lot of you who are out there. So that kind of talks to some of the risks with outdated. And then naturally there would be challenges that people face every day while they're using their traditional DR. So we'll shake it up a little bit. I know, Jeff, you went first last time. Mike, maybe you can talk to some of the challenges that you see with people working with traditional DRs in today's world and some of our clients and people we've talked to.
Sure. I think one of the first challenges is costs. Costs associated with traditional DRs include, infrastructure around duplicate servers, secondary data centers and the costs and associated staffing and facility costs with those. Some operational considerations, again, staffing that site, and then regular maintenance, having to what it costs to complete in those systems and keep them up to date with traditional DR. And then another cost is complexity. Duplicate systems, secondary data centers, keeping all of that coordinated and up to date requires detailed planning, management, team communication. All of that has a cost when it comes to coordinating and getting a DR either tested, validated, or even just managed and up to date. So that's definitely something to consider. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah. So, in addition to what Mike already mentioned, RPO and RTO are critical. So, a lot of traditional DR solutions have very long recovery times. As I alluded to earlier, I can think of one test I did within the last, say, year and a half that was a all hands on call for 22 straight hours to restore everything on the DR side. Now, that was a successful test, but as you can imagine, you know, 12 to 15 IT folks on the phone for 22 hours is not the best use of everyone's time. So we could certainly get tighter than that with modern DR solutions. And then the other thing that we run into a lot of times is many traditional DR solutions have a single point. So, you may have an on-prem data center, and then its secondary is, whatever, 50 miles away down the road. And that's your only option in the event of a DR. Whereas with newer cloud-based models, we can typically restore kind of anywhere. You could go to another cloud, you can go to another on-prem data center, you can go to another data center in a different cloud entirely that may be located in another country. So with geographical distance becoming less of a barrier in modern solutions, we overcome some of the shortcomings in the traditional way of doing things.
Excellent, excellent. I hopefully that gives a good high level of risk and challenges with traditional, right? Which is part of the goal of this webinar is to mitigate those risks and challenges. So I think that what would be good now is we'll move to our next polling question. We'll get a little bit more than do you have one or not? But when was the last time your DR plan was tested? And again, we'll keep the polling question up for about 30 seconds or so, and then we'll review the responses with you. So if you would mind taking the time, we'd appreciate it. All right, again, I don't know, Jeff or Mike, if you want to take a look at these and kind of review the responses and see where we are and what we have.
Yeah, happy to. So we have a couple who have actually tested within the last 6 months, which is great. Also, one who has tested within the last 12 months, so pretty good as well. And then we have about 50% of the participants who have either never tested or only tested, after a year. It's been over a year since they've tested last. So for the folks who have never tested your DR plan, I hate to break the news to you, but you may not have a DR plan. You have a plan, but if you don't know if it works, that's usually a big no-no. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for taking part in that. So now what we'd like to do is we talked about, if you have a traditional one, what are the challenges, what are the risks? Now we'd like to take a look at, it's a known fact, right? Business continuity, DRs, they're critical to organizations, especially within an IT, right? Organizations need to be confident they can fail over, fall back when needed. We've talked about the shortcomings. We've talked about some of the risks. Now I'd like to, talk to the guys about how does our solution address them and what does it really look like? All right. So, Jeff, how about if you start out and, with the excitement of what a modernized DR looks like and what DR reimagined look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're imagining DR here at iArch Solutions is to leverage the power of cloud and hybrid/multi-cloud systems. So what that really means is we're leveraging Rackware and Oracle OCI in partnership to be able to deliver a disaster recovery in a couple of flavors, which we'll dive into later on. But what we're able to do now is to host the ability for customers to have their workloads backed up into the OCI cloud. And then we can restore those to kind of any place at any time that you would like, whether that's somewhere else within OCI, whether that would go to Azure or AWS, Google Cloud, different on-prem data center, kind of it's a du jour choice for your consultancy. And with that, I'll pass it over to Mike to go into a little more detail.
So we use modern tools and technologies to update old plans and old school DR approaches. We use modern backups and recovery technologies to go into the cloud, bringing the framework of legacy approaches with the benefits of elasticity, scalability, and major cost savings. Our plan allows us to tailor RPO and RTO needs to your organization and guarantee that we can recover those efficiently, repeatably, and reliably. And we do that by leveraging cloud technologies, and which allows us to be more flexible, scalable, and we offer benefits. And as Jeff alluded to, a couple of flavors. We offer a hosted service, and then we also offer a managed service, which is some customers prefer a system in which everything is still on premise for them, but we manage them. We'll talk about that a little more in detail as we go forward.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mike. So hopefully that gets a little bit of excitement going as to what it could look like. So as Mike mentioned, we offer both a hosted and a managed flavor. So let's take a closer look to what a hosted solution looks like. And I guess, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, maybe kind of walk us through, what does hosted really look like? What are the components, how they work, and any considerations as you're doing it?
Yep. So the key thing to start with is kind of in this central blue cloud here, where under Oracle Cloud it says RMM. So the RMM is the Rackware engine that we use to back up customers' workloads and store them securely in Oracle's cloud environment. This is a non-disruptive process, so we can run these backups. I have some customers that are running them every 20 minutes, some of them run them every hour. Kind of depends on the needs for the RPO within the environment we're protecting. And there's a highly efficient Delta sync process. So the first syncs are probably going to be a little longer. And then after that, we're kind of transferring Delta. So it does speed up the process. Highly automated. So when we're ready to provision these to a target DR environment, whether that's another on-premise data center or somewhere in a cloud, it goes out and it builds all of the networking, provisioning, et cetera, that's needed to stand up these hosts and basically fail over to your DR environment. Cutover times are usually less than an hour. And again, you can kind of push anywhere you want. So it's a subscription package that we set up with you once we've determined your workloads, and then you can sleep safe knowing that you can move these to the target of your choice.
All right. So in this case, the big piece here is that the RMM is hosted by us on in our OCI tenancy. That would be correct then, Jeff?
That is correct.
Okay.
And then that compartment, if you will, is secured to the individual customer, and we manage the RMM on their behalf. Although, again, depending on the customer, they may want some access to that to be able to keep an eye on things as they're backed up and recovered. So we have some flexibility there regarding customers getting access into these components.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Now let's take a look at then what a managed DR solution looks like. And Mike, maybe you could explain what the fundamental difference is between hosted and managed to the participants.
Absolutely. So, we offer the hosted version, which Jeff just talked about, but many of our customers have talked to us and they're interested in the idea, but they don't want their images or their data to leave their organization's network. So they prefer an approach where we take this RMM, which we've been referring to as is the Rackware management module, that is the brain, if you will, of the overall backup and recovery process. And we put that in the customer's data center and we manage that remotely and verify that the system is working as expected. It's the backups and syncs are happening, and everything remains operational and ready when a disaster strikes. The overall functionality is exactly the same as the hosted, except the module is on premise, and that also means that those snapshots and all of the backups that get synced are also stored on premise in our customer's data system. We still have the option to push to the DR location of their choice, even though it's on premise in a data center, assuming that data center has not gone down, but the systems have gone down. We could push this to another data center in their network. We could push them to a cloud that they're already associated with, or we could spin up and push to any target cloud in an on-demand kind of situation and provision and go. So it's something to consider. It's certainly available to any of our customers. And the only major considerations is if you're using targets beyond Oracle, there may be additional fees with moving your systems in and out. Oracle is our choice because there are no additional egress costs when it comes to getting your data in and out of a cloud.
All right, perfect. I think that covered it pretty well on that one. So now we've talked a little bit about the hosted and the managed, right? Um, and now I'd like to talk to the team about, obviously we talked about challenges, we talked about risk, we talked about what this does to mitigate those risks and overcome the challenges. The next question then would be, well, what would I expect to see as benefits, right? Can I quantify what these benefits will look like? What are they? So we've talked and we kind of came up with, you know, addressing costs, which is a big one. We talked a little bit about the confidence of being able to have repeatable. So we grouped them into, cost, confidence, and flexibility. So now I'd like to take a little bit of time and maybe we can go through it. And Jeff, if you want to talk to the cost um, benefit, I think that's probably the easiest one to kind of quantify. But maybe you can talk to how this solution addresses the concern around cost.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that happens with traditional IT DR solutions around cost right out of the gate is older DR solutions tend to have a standby or a standalone DR environment, right? So I have a sunk cost at the capital level for hardware that is sitting there, and maybe I'm syncing it in some fashion, but ultimately it's unutilized until I either do a DR test or have an actual DR event. So it's a specialized system. It requires some specialized staff knowledge, run books, all these sorts of things to maintain. And that's time, sunk money and hardware, and it's effort. Additionally, you find that those have higher RPO and RTOs. And as I mentioned, sunk storage and compute costs because it's just over there and not utilized. So in our solution, we find that we can reduce those admin costs by quite a lot by only backing up the images and not having a DR environment, if you will, until we click the button and it gets built out. And then, of course, we're reducing all the storage costs because really all you're storing is a snapshot until the day of a test or a failover. And if it's a test, you can remove those boxes when you're done with it, and then you're not paying for DR for the remainder of the 6 months or year or however long that period is in between tests. So with that, I'll
All right,
pass it back
perfect.
over to you, Steve.
Yep, no, that's really good. I think that's probably the easiest one to kind of quantify. Then we talked about confidence and flexibility. Mike, would you mind talking to how you see benefits around confidence and flexibility and how they really truly can be managed and measured?
Sir. So one of the things Jeff talked about is the ability to reduce your overall costs and your admin needs. And one of the ways that's achieved is the process becomes automated. And with automation comes repeatability and reliability. And when you have a repeatable, reliable service source or system that you know is compliant, you have the confidence to go to your C-level staff and say, we're prepared. We can recover our system in the event of disaster. We can test our DR, we can switch as needed. And one of the abilities the newer technologies have, and one of the things we like is when you go to a DR, we were confident we can get into a DR. Well, what happens if we're in DR for any extended period of time, and we have changes in real time that have happened to this system, and we need to go back to our primary site. So we need to take um, basically what is now the DR site, and we basically need to fail back to the primary site. We need to capture all of that data, and with new technologies and and the way to automate things, we can definitely switch back and fall back to your primary site and keep all of the operational uh, data that has happened during the DR events. So it's very reliable. It's something we can be confident in, and we find that we can overall increase performance by up to 30%. Another feature of that is the flexibility. Again, with automation and reliability, we can start looking at where and how we want to recover. It gives us the flexibility to true any to any. We can recover any compute system, any storage system to any target, whether that be on premise, another data center in your network somewhere else in the country, or into the cloud, whether that be any cloud you can consider. AWS, Oracle, OCI obviously is our one of choice based on costs and scalability and flexibility, but you can go anywhere to anywhere. So it's up to you as a customer of where you want to recover those.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. And hopefully that kind of ties everything together with the risk and the challenges and and true ROI for a modern DR solution. I think what would be helpful now is if we spend a little bit of time on actual clients that have used this solution, and we can talk to what they did, what they were doing, and take a look at real life benefits that they had experienced. So, Jeff, would you mind talking about a couple of the most recent
Sure.
client successes that we've had?
Yep. So first one is a manufacturing provider vertical. They needed disaster recovery for a brand new EPM 11.2x environment that is built in OCI. So they were new to OCI, and they kind of had a late realization that their current DR plan would not work in their new home. So they had to meet the RPO and RTO objectives for two completely different environments, EPM environments within their world. One was an HFM corporate consolidation environment. The other one was a planning S-based budgeting and analysis environment. In both cases, the operating systems were a mix of Windows and Linux hosts. They had 15 servers between the two environments, and they needed an hourly RPO and RTO to move from Ashburn, which is our primary region, over to the Chicago region. We were able to add this kind of late into the project. With minimal setup time, we were able to stand up an RMM and meet all of those goals for a full DR test that we had scheduled for like a 3-hour session with their team, and we were all off the phone in about 50 minutes. It was 100% compliant with their security and audit requirements, and it was an 80% time save over their previous DR plan. So they're very happy with the solution. In this case, they are hosting, if you will, the RMM within their own tenancy in OCI, and we're just managing it now on their behalf.
That's a really good successful story that hits on a lot of the challenges. It also hits on a lot of the benefits that we had talked to. So appreciate that, Jeff. And I think you have one more
Yep.
case that you wanted to talk to as well.
Yeah, this is an automotive services company. In this case, these folks are actually running what I'll call a legacy version of EPM at this point. It's a 11.124 running S-Base in an all-in-one box that also had SQL Server with a lot of custom SQL scripting that they weren't really excited about migrating and updating to newer versions. But they had to get it off of on-prem. So one of the neat things about Rackware that we're really not focusing on today, but is important for folks to understand, is not only is it a great DR utility, but it's also a migration utility. So you can use it to move existing workloads into a cloud. So, maybe you've got a bunch of boxes that you're like, man, I need to get these over to the cloud. I don't want to rebuild them over there. How do I do that? Right. And, some of the providers do provide some mechanisms for that, but they're not always great. or they may have challenges with older operating systems. Well, Rackware can basically lift these boxes up and move them into a cloud for you. So in this case, we clone the instance, and we set up 25 point-to-point VPNs for their different dealerships to be able to connect into this box without issue. And in their case, we hit an RPO and an RTO of 4 hours for the RTO and 1 hour for the RPO. So we're backing up the server every hour, but we have 4 hours to bring it back online if we should need it. And again, we were able to complete this 2 weeks earlier than we expected, and they can actually do a 15-minute replication. They're only doing it every hour, but it only takes 15 minutes for it to actually replicate cross region, and they're very happy with the results of that as well.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
So now, after looking at some of them, going through some of the polling questions, everything we've talked about so far, I think it's a good time for the final polling question, which would be, are you looking to modernize or improve your DR for your organization? And same thing, we'll pull up the question. We'll leave it up there for 30 seconds or so, and then we'll talk about what the results are telling us. So thank you in advance. All right, thank you, Alex. Jeff, Mike, if you want to,
Sure.
once again, give us the pearls of wisdom, check out the results, and give us your opinion of what that's telling us.
Yeah, so we have a couple folks who are looking to actually get something moving in 2024 or even just after that. And then a number of folks who have no immediate plans, but I would say that given the percentage, which is about 78% who don't have immediate plans, if you fall in the group of folks who haven't had your DR plan tested, you might want to think about at the very least having a test of your DR plan for ensuring that when push comes to shove, your business continuity is safe.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So I think as we get towards the end, and we'll start looking at some of the questions. We got some good information about where people are, what they have, what they use, which it has been very helpful. What we'd like to then say is, we would love to talk to you about where you are in this. There are, again, people who have not tested it in ever or in quite some years. We'd love to sit down and talk to you about what you have, how it works, and what it looks like, and what it could potentially look like. If it's something you would like to do, we would love to sit down and talk to you about that. If this turns out to be a solution you would like, we definitely would be offering an offer for those who took part in this webinar. So we're here to talk to you about that one, as Jeff had mentioned. So we look forward to having that opportunity. Having said that, then what I'd like to do right now is take a look at some of the questions. There's quite a few that have popped up in the question section of the webinar. We'll take a look at those. If we don't get through all of them, but I think we should be able to, we will be placing the recording on our website along with the questions and the answers. So now let me take a look at some of the questions that we have received so far. First one is just, what is an RMM and how many would I need? And Jeff or Mike, if you want to take that question.
Sure. So an RMM is the orchestration server or host for Rackware. And it's basically a Linux box that is going to back up versions of your hosts and store them on attached storage so that at the time of a DR event, it can build new boxes, whether they're going to an on-premise VM center or whether they're going to some sort of virtual compute in a cloud. Yeah, I mean that's the sum of it. Now, how many you need depends on how many servers we're backing up. So as a general rule of thumb, you can do about 50 hosts per RMM. So if you're thinking of a data center that has 100 boxes in it, you're probably looking at 2 RMMs, and depending on RP and an RTO and how aggressive those are, we may find that 3 makes more sense. So it just kind of depends.
All right, that's pretty good. You were psychic to address the second question, which was how many servers can an RMM support? So appreciate that.
Yep.
2 for 1. Let's see. Another question would be what can we expect on average for RPO RTO?
Yep. So RPO and RTO are very dependent on kind of a number of things, but as a rule of thumb, as we mentioned earlier in the slides, you're kind of looking at that hour window for RTO, right? To stand up a brand new box in a data center. Now, if you leave those all existing in the data center and turn them off, and then only, power up the boxes maybe every couple of weeks to sync them up and then shut them back down again, you can get very aggressive with those RTO times. RPO is data dependent typically. And so depending on the volume of data, I tend to see large boxes in the terabyte range, still backing up in the 15 to 20 minute window, but that can be very bandwidth and latency dependent. So it just typically we do a little bit of a dry run to see where we can get, tune some things, and then go from there. It's a little customer dependent based upon workload though.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Let's see. We have another one. Can I fail back my DR solution once my disaster is over?
Yep, Mike kind of touched on that. We absolutely have a failback option. So, in other words, what happens is once you fail over what they call a stage 2 in Rackware to your disaster recovery site, that site now becomes the primary, and the RMM goes to backing that host up, and those um, changes are now synchronized. And then when we go to fail back to your traditional home, if you will, your source, we sync the deltas back the other way. So there's no data loss in this process.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks. Still got a couple more, and I do think we'll get through them all. Let's see. Are there any data size restrictions?
There are no data size restrictions. That said, most of the systems I've worked with, they're in the terabytes range, right? If we're talking about petabytes of data, probably still something that might be able to be achievable, but it would definitely be something we would want to talk with you about and maybe even bring Rackware into the conversation.
Okay. Appreciate that one as well. Let's see. We have another one. What is the benefit of using your DR solution rather than built-in DR and backup tools that come with the cloud providers? I don't know, Mike, do you want to
Yeah,
jump in on this
I
one?
can I can jump in on that. Jeff's been answering so many. What is so the benefit of using a DR service like ours versus the traditional tools is one, the cloud providers all have their own traditional tool, and they are, workable tools. Some are actually very good. They are not necessarily easy to use, and they're not necessarily code free or something that every admin can do. So the answer basically comes down to simplicity and flexibility. Our process using the tools we've chosen is very simple. It's very straightforward. It's easy to identify the assets that need to be backed up, establish what needs to be done with them as an automated process, run that's GUI driven. And the next part of that is flexibility. Any of your cloud provider tools are concentrating on and DR within that cloud. So you may be able to DR from one OCI region to another OCI region, for example, but you can't necessarily DR from your data center to OCI or from OCI to another data center or another cloud. And we're seeing more and more compliance requirements that organizations are asked if they have an overall cloud to cloud DR plan. Are they putting all their eggs in one basket? Say, if AWS is not available, what is their plan? How are they going to recover? So our ability allows us to recover if the cloud is down, or if your primary cloud is down, we can go to another cloud or we can go to some other data center. So it's flexible, it's not it's not vendor dependent, and it's simple and easy to use.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Well, let's see. I think we have two more questions. I think we can get through them all before the scheduled end time. Do we have to own our own cloud account to use this? Um,
No.
that may go in several directions, but I don't know, Jeff.
Yeah, no, you don't. So if you were to go with the managed option, then we would build you a compartment and a tenancy that you do not have to own the tenancy. We just set up a subscription service with you, and that covers your access to the tenancy as well as the RMM to back up your workloads. So you don't have to have your own cloud account. If you want your own cloud account or already have one and want to host an RMM there, we can help you do that as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks. Final
Yep.
question. How can we get more information on the DR solution? Do you offer a proof of concept?
Yep, we do. So there's a couple ways we can do that as well. We could just do a demo because we have running RMMs in our own iArch solutions tenancy / lab. So we can demonstrate, the functionality of the product for you, let you get to see the look and the feel. Or alternatively, if you want to run your own POC, then we can work with Rackware to get you a 90-day license to stand one up and demo that for you based upon the number of systems you're going to have. And then if you're happy with it, we just convert that license into a functional real world license, and you're kind of off to the races. So you don't have to rebuild it twice if we work with your live data the first time.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
That looks like all the questions we have at currently, and we're almost at the top of our webinar. So again, if their question came in late, we didn't get to it, we will post the answers along with the questions, along with the recording on our website. We definitely want to thank you for taking part of this. Judging by the number of questions and the breadth and depth of them, there's some, there are a lot of good questions about that. Hopefully, we gave you the information you need. We definitely look forward to talking with you further about this. If you want to talk a little bit more, we'll send out a copy of this and all of our contacts on here to contact Jeff, myself, or Mike. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Thank you much.